Penn State quarterback Drew Allar is going to break out this season. It's not really a hot take, is it, folks? So let's talk about 5 of his other teammates.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, that is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Where does your team every single day? I'm Zach Sako. I'm your host of the show. Thanks for joining me for this one. And Drew Allar is the obvious choice, first-year starter for the Penn State Nittany Lions, but that doesn't drive the conversation now, does it? We're going to talk about 5 breakout candidates from this Penn State team that might be flying under the radar for some, with a little mix of defense and offense. And then we're going to wrap up this episode talking about what to expect from these training camps. The opening one for Penn State going on Wednesday, August 2nd. In the evening, we're going to talk about that on the next episode, react to that. But 5 candidates. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to go a little bit back and forth here. And one of them, you just can't keep him off this list if you're going to make any breakout candidate or someone that's ready to explode for Penn State football. That is Dennis Sutton, defensive end. Now, I know what people might be thinking here. Dennis Sutton, well, he's a backup. He's not even going to start for I want to put that to rest as far as, well, they don't start. They're a backup. Similar to basketball, you have a 6th, you have a 7th, you have an 8th person off the bench, right? You have your starting 5, but those 5 starters don't always contribute the best stats. It's somebody that's going to, it's someone that's going to come off the bench more often than not that is able to produce stats at a high rate, and that's Dennis Sutton this year. I don't think you can keep him on the bench any longer. This was someone who came in his freshman season just last year. He's a true sophomore. They burned his red shirt. He was somebody that came in with already NFL prototype size, 6'6", 250 pounds, just had to refine some of his skills, just kind of had to fine polish it. But he already came in with this physical acumen that was beyond no other. You can't really find that. That's why he was a 5-star consensus across the board, right? He was somebody that was recruited by Georgia. It didn't matter. Alabama. I could name every single school they had offered him. Okay, but Penn State was able to secure his services. And Chop Robinson, along with Adisa Isaac, those are going to be your starters. They're more of the veterans, but Dennis Sutton is just too much of an athletic freak to keep off the field. I envision double-digit sacks for Dennis Sutton. They're going to find ways to get creative. And the way that Penn State likes to operate with its defensive lines, they like to rotate in groups, okay? So you have a fresh 4, and then you rotate in. So you have a 1A and a 1B group. There's not necessarily mixing and matching. And Chop Robinson didn't play as many snaps as you would have liked him to last year. Adisa Isaac is finally fully recovered from that injury he sustained not too long ago. He was able to play all of last season, which was good to see, and he comes back. But Dennis Sutton, you don't keep him off the field just for the sake of keeping Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac on the field. So I think that Dennis Sutton is going to make his way onto the football field. They're going to rotate pretty frequently in and out, and you have 3 very capable pass rushers to go along with Amin Vanover and Zariah Fisher are also going to be rotational guys. But I like Dennis Sutton. He wears the number 33 for a reason. He's going after that sack record of 33 that's held by Courtney Brown. And he's going to need this year and next year to do it, because I don't think he's going to play anymore beyond that. He'll be a first-round pick for sure if everything goes well. And that trio of Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, and Dennis Sutton, he can line up on either side of the line. So he's going to get his opportunities, and tackles are not going to have fun with this. Now let's move to the offensive side of the football, and a position that's going to have to chip guys like Dennis Sutton, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac. Tight end position, if they're going to line up the block. Unfortunately, they're on the same team. Theo Johnson is my second breakout candidate here. This is someone who I believe will become Drew Allar's favorite target. Okay, Dante Cephas transfers in, right? You're still building that chemistry, that rapport. Keandre Lambert-Smith, don't get me wrong, and Trey Wallace are both and we're going to bring up Trey Wallace again here in just a second. But I look at Theo Johnson, NFL draft scouts, they view him as a late first round pick, definitely a surefire second round pick because of his size, his build, 6'6", 260 pounds. He's the veteran. Everybody that I've talked to that is close to the Penn State football program, and when you ask these people who are the new leaders of this team, well, Theo Johnson comes up every single time. It's Theo Johnson. It's Theo Johnson. He's leading. You see it at the events that are held to the public, that are held to the media, who is being the loudest, who is directing orders, who is essentially that player's coach. That is Theo Johnson. I like his leadership. I like his mentality. I like how long he's been with the program now. This is a player that I'm really excited for. Brenton Strange goes off to the NFL. Tyler Warren is good. Don't get me wrong. Tyler Warren could handle the production load, but there are two different types of tight ends. Theo Johnson is the wide receiver of the two, right? He's going to be more of the receiving tight end. Tyler Warren, on the other hand, is a better blocker, much better blocker. Theo Johnson is an okay blocker, but that doesn't score touchdowns all the time in this case. But Theo Johnson will stretch the field. I think he's going to be Drew Allar's favorite target over the middle and someone that is going to shatter the stat expectation. So let's look this up, right? Theo Johnson, just last season, 20 receptions, 328 yards, 4 touchdowns. I could easily see him being someone that doubles all of that. 40 receptions, 600 plus yards, maybe 10 touchdowns, but something in the 7 to 8 range is safe to say. Big target, over the middle, athletic. Linebackers can't cover him. Safeties are too small to match up against him. Linebackers are too slow to cover him. I like Theo Johnson as a mismatch problem. Drew Allar's already built some chemistry. We've seen him target him. One of the touchdowns that Theo Johnson caught was from Drew Allar last season. So I think Penn State will have a nice dynamic duo between the two. Allar to Johnson. Folks should get used to that. Okay, then up next, I already kind of teased it, but Trey Wallace is going to be a breakout candidate. And third on this list because it is more of a crowded wide receiver room than one might anticipate. Dante Cephas now transfers in. Keandre Lambert-Smith is the other veteran of the room, been with the program for a long time now. Then you have Trey Wallace. And the reason I bring up Trey Wallace is because James Franklin brought him up all through spring practice. Anytime he gave a press conference and people would ask, hey, how are the receivers doing? What do you like from the wide receivers? Before Dante Cephas even stepped foot on campus. And James Franklin would say, well, the wide receivers have a long way to go, except two guys, KLS, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and Trey Wallace. And they're like, okay, this is good news. And Wallace had some playing time last year, 19 catches, 273 yards, a touchdown, but gets the chance to be more of a focal point in this offense. He will be wide receiver target number 3. He's going to be one of the boundaries. Dante Cephas will be the X. He will be the number 1. Trey Wallace will be that essentially number 2, the other boundary wide receiver, the Z. And then Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to be the slot. He's going to be in the middle. That's my prediction. That's my expectation for the depth chart. It makes a lot of sense. I'm sure that the coaches would agree. But Trey Wallace, his athletic ability. So what do all these breakout candidates have involved? What do they all have in common? They are freak athletes. And I don't know if a lot of people have seen that video of Trey Wallace touching the ceiling in the Lash building, the workout building. It is really impressive with the way that he's able to jump. So I think he's going to make spectacular catches. Someone that's going to be able to sky above. That's good in the red zone. He's not the biggest player, around 6 foot plus, right? But he's not your 6'5", 6'6" target like a Theo Johnson is a tight end, like a Malik McLean who's 6'4". But I think that Harrison Trey Wallace is going to make a lot of impressive catches this upcoming season in 2023 and will be a reliable third option for Drew Allar in the wide receiver group. Theo Johnson will be a main target. Dante Cephas is going to be wide receiver number 1. Keandre Lambert-Smith is going to be. This is a good group, and I like the fact that Trey Wallace really rounds it out. There's not a drop off. That's the most important part of this, is that there's not a sizable talent gap between Cephas, Johnson, and Lambert-Smith. Wallace doesn't allow that to be. He's not really the weakest link, if you will. This group is very balanced, and Drew Allar will have his options to throw to. That's part of the reason why he's going to be able to break out. Now, before we get to my final 2 breakout candidates and talk about which one could have the best season out of all of them, debating that, let's hear from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager. For your small business, you want to be 100% certain that you have access It's the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It is easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. Then add your job and the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills, just the right experience, so that you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com. Check them out. Penn State rivals, HappyValleyInsider.com for all the latest when it comes to Penn State football. Recruiting, still not the priority as much so with training camp going on, but still you're going to see it really ramp back up in the fall as football season just kicks off. So the final two breakout candidates for Penn State football here, and we're going to flip it back over to the defensive side. So we went defense, offense with Denai Dennis Sutton, Johnson, and Wallace. How about safety? And I'll throw out Jalen Reed as another candidate. Jalen Reed's coming from an interesting spot because in the Rose Bowl, he got hurt. Okay. He was hurt. He missed the remainder of the Rose Bowl. He had surgery, something that he's recovering from. But Jalen Reed is a very talented player, someone who was a former 4-star recruit, someone that can play the Jair Brown role. Because what I like about Jalen Reed's game is he's not all or one type of safety. And it seems like Penn State's defense needs that. Whether it's Brent Pryor, Manny Diaz, it really doesn't matter. You need that do-it-all safety. And Jalen Reed can do that. He's good in coverage. He's good at playing, especially in zone. You want your safety to be really good in zone coverage. He's not afraid to come down into the box and make a tackle, make a play. So Jalen Reed, if he and Keaton Ellis move in, Keaton Ellis is one of the captains of this team, one of the veterans. Jalen Reed now moving into that veteran role. If he's all recovered from his injury, I like him to make a lot of plays and basically be that next up-and-coming do-it-all safety. Now, don't get me wrong, Zach Wheatley's in that room and KJ Winston. But Jalen Reed is someone that has been talked about for a long time as that future big name player on the defense. And this is where I think he steps up. I don't know the severity of the injury that was sustained in the Rose Bowl, but it seems like things are all going well, and it points to a week 1 starting spot alongside Keaton Ellis. And like I said, he's versatile, so he can play down in the box as a strong safety. He can play over the top as a free safety. I anticipate more of that Jair Brown role as your free safety playing back, but Jair Brown eventually played positionless football. But Keaton Ellis, he can be more of that strong safety type, play down in the box and allow Jalen Reed to play center field. And we could expect 3 safety looks from the Penn State defense this year. Expect Zach Wheatley to be out there in coverage as well, just because of how capable a Jalen Reed is in a man-to-man. I prefer his zone coverage abilities, but he can play man-to-man as well. So that might be something that Manny Diaz does get a little creative with. Finally, candidate number 5 to break out with this Penn State football team. And there's a host of names I could have went with. Okay. I'll give you some honorable mentions. Jordan Vandenberg, Zane Durant along the line of scrimmage, right? Along the defensive line. Amari Evans at wide receiver. But since we already nominated Trey Wallace, Amari Evans just isn't going to have enough opportunities. KJ Winston is somebody. Cam Miller is another player defensively. I'm going to go at the linebacker spot. No, it is not the true freshman. I was tempted to pick Tony Rojas, but I'm going to go with someone. Again, I'm looking for players to make a leap. I think these guys will have impact. I think all these players that I'm naming will have impact, but I'm looking a breakout candidate to make a leap, to become a household name for Penn State. That's Kobe King. Kalen King's twin brother. Kalen King broke out last year being somebody that was targeted heavily because Joey Porter Jr. Had all the attention, or at least teams game planned away from him. And that's how Kalen King became one of the most reliable cornerbacks, and he's going to move into that Joey Porter spot. But how about Kobe King, his twin brother, playing middle linebacker, was back and forth with Tyler Elson a year ago. And then you want to look, when you're projecting breakout candidates, you want to look for players who were really coming on strong at the end of the season. And one of them was Kobe King. Kobe King can score defensive touchdowns. He can fly all over the football field. I mean, Curtis Jacobs, Abdul Carter, Kobe King in the middle. Those are all, you can't get by the second level. I don't know how a running back or someone on a screenplay gets by any of those three defenders when they're all on the field at the same time. So then couple that with some of your backups that you have in a Tony Rojas. But I like Kobe King a lot. He led the team in tackles against Indiana. He scored a defensive touchdown on a scoop and score with a fumble recovery against Rutgers. I know those were some weaker teams that they played down the stretch, but the problem with Kobe King was never a matter of athletic ability or football abilities, like he couldn't tackle, he couldn't cover. It was a matter of being able to dissect the defense. So something that Penn State really values a lot, again, and as they should, right? This isn't groundbreaking information by any stretch of the matter. For Kobe King, it was a matter of assuming that Mike linebacker role, okay? You have to be able to call out the defense. You have to be able to recognize formations, the line of scrimmage, what the offensive line is doing. Basically be the quarterback of the defense. And that's a lot to ask for somebody only in their second year of the program. So now Kobe King coming into another season, I like him to potentially lead this team in tackles when all said and done. Curtis Jacobs is going to be more of your coverage type of linebacker, given that he is going to be on the tight ends. He is the on-ball linebacker in this Penn State defense. Abdul Carter probably will lead the linebackers in sacks, not in sacks for the team, but he's everywhere. He's flying all over the football field. He's going to put pressure on the quarterback. And then Kobe King is going to be more of that middle tier linebacker that is doing everything, that basically safeguards the middle, but is also going to be one of the first to attack when there is a running play. So I like Kobe King because of how much he has matured in terms of his football IQ. He's very capable of it. It's no disrespect to Tyler Elsdon. Kobe King is a much better athlete at that Mike linebacker spot. And now that he has the capability of being able to call the defense with confidence, Penn State's coaching staff is definitely reassured that he's going to be on the football field for a lot of plays. And to have Tyler Elsdon being able to rotate in frequently enough, I think that Kobe King will have a really good season. And I know what people, Curtis Jacobs will break. Curtis Jacobs has already broken out. Come on. He had 14 tackles in one game last season. Interceptions, touchdowns himself against, right? He scored against Michigan. Everybody knows about Curtis Jacobs. He is a top 5 linebacker prospect in next year's draft. I'm looking for guys that really, they balloon, they jump, they make that giant leap where they were a season ago. And Curtis Jacobs, he might get better, but he's already kind of at the top of his ceiling. I'm looking for players that are going to really take that next step forward and shatter expectations. Okay, Drew Allar going from backup now to a starter. It's obvious that he's going to break out. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, they don't break out because they already broke out. They were breakout candidates a year ago. So those are your 5 breakout candidates: Denai Dennis Sutton, Theo Johnson, Trey Wallace, Kobe King, and Jalen Reed. 3 Penn State fans should feel good that 2 of them are pass catchers, and then the other guys at all levels of the defense, the line, the linebackers, and the safety spot. Again, check out happyvalleyinsider.com for all the latest when it comes to Penn State football. As Penn State rivals, happyvalleyinsider.com. And in this final segment, let's go to expectations for Penn State football practice. Okay, similar to the breakout candidates, right? You want to watch and follow along to see if these guys are going to live up to the potential. But training camp is underway. Wednesday, August 2nd, we'll have the next episode is going to be about reacting to it, what I was able to see. Make sure you stay tuned for videos and upcoming content centered around being able to see and observe 15 to 20 minutes of practice here. But the most important part of this is the quarterback competition. Okay, so when we're watching the opening training camp, it's really more about seeing Drew Allar, Bo Prabula, and how far they have come. Okay. Bo Prabula, if Penn State and James Franklin are really going to advertise this and make this a quarterback competition legitimately, if you're asking my opinion, I think that Drew Allar is the start. Bo Prabula did not see a game last year. right? Let's think about that for a second, because people sit back and say it's like, well, Drew Allar is, and that was fun. If you follow the Locked On Nittany Twitter account, you see that Drew Allar is saving receipts because there are people that are still skeptical and say, well, if there's a quarterback competition, then Drew Allar is not really the guy and he's not developing. Was there an effort to make Bo Prabula in the games last year? Was there an effort to get him in ball games last year? They didn't get him in not once, twice, a couple of games, because you can still preserve the red shirt up till 4 games. They burned Drew Allar's red shirt, and this was noticeable early in the season. They got him in against Ohio. Now, Purdue, he had to come in because Sean Clifford left with a temporary injury, but they made it a plan. It was a blueprint to get Drew Allar. Where do you see that? Penn State fans criticized that all the longest time, that, oh, Drew Allar should just go out there and be the starter right away. Sean Clifford was the better quarterback last year, but now Drew Allar is the guy. He's the face of this team. He's the quarterback that is supposed to take Penn State to the next level. No more. It's about pushing the boundary of the 9-3, 10-2 teams. It is about being 11-1, 12-0 college football playoff berth, or college football playoff serious contender when this group expands to 12, when they go to the 12-team playoff in due time. So Drew Allar is supposed to do that. It's a quarterback competition simply because Drew Allar, you don't want him to get comfortable. And as a young player, this is just across the board. I'm not trying to accuse Drew Allar of anything. I think he's very strong-minded. He's mature. He's not going to take a back seat. But you still want to create fire. You still want to create good competition. And there's a lot of camp battles. There's a lot of camp competitions, okay? Quarterback's not the only one. Everybody cares about it. But don't think that Penn State is, if you're looking at it from an unbiased position, Allar is the starter. Bo Prabula is good. He's a capable backup. This is a wooden desk, okay? Knock on wood if you're watching here. But Drew Allar, if he were to go out of the game for whatever reason, I am in full confidence that Bo Prabula can lead this offense up and down the field. He provides a different dynamic. So if you want to expect something from this quarterback competition, expect that Drew Allar's the starter with Bo Prabula essentially playing that Tommy Stevens role. They're going to reintroduce the line package. If you remember, the everydayers might remember this. Go back to spring practices and the introductory press conferences. Bo Prabula, James Franklin said they're going to try to get creative with him, and that they're going to try to put him in some wildcat type of packages. He adds, because he's more of a runner, he adds a different dynamic. And this isn't, Bo Prabula is not the second coming of Trace McSorley. Bo Prabula is Bo Prabula. He's bigger. I can't argue if he's stronger or not, but he's got more size to him. I don't know who's faster. I know that Trace McSorley is more of a gamer, but there is that it factor that both of them possess. If we're going to compare the two of them, McSorley and Prabula both have that it factor. But Drew Allar fits more into what Mike Yurcich wants to do, and he's just the better overall passer and more accurate as well. And I think he has more of a command of this offense. Penn State will adjust things to fit what Bo Prabula can do as a quarterback. A couple other things I'm looking for in these practices. I want to see the wide receivers. I want to see how Dante Cephas is adjusting, see if they do any timing drills with quarterbacks and wide receivers. If Dante Cephas has good, if he's synced up with Drew Allar or Bo Prabula, whichever one. Some of the backups too, because now that we know who the 3 assumed starters are, we don't have a depth chart today, but it's going to be Cephas, Wallace, and Keandre Lambert-Smith. It's obvious, but I want to see who's going to be next up, right? Amari Evans, has he come a long way? Because other players were quick to praise Amari Evans. Where is Sean Clifford's little brother, Liam Clifford? People see him as a breakout candidate. Caden Saunders, former 4-star, a 97 recruit once upon a time, 97 out of 100. Is he making the leap? So who's going to come in when they're going to need breaks? You need depth at every position. What do the backup wide receivers look like? How are they playing? Because James Franklin was only quick to praise Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Wallace. The safeties, okay, I brought up Zachy Wheatley, KJ Winston. Even though I think Jalen Reed's going to break out, is Penn State in a position where it's going to be just Keaton Ellis and Jalen Reed, or will Zachy Wheatley see an expanded amount of playing time? Will KJ Winston get a lot of playing time? And last but not least, it's boring, but I'm going to emphasize this quite a bit when it comes to this Penn State football team. If there is a weak link on this team, it is the special teams. Kicker, punter, punt returner. We don't know any of those spots. And I know media is only going to see 15 to 20 minutes of this practice, of this training camp week by week. But I need to see who's going to be the starting kicker, who's going to handle kickoffs, who's going to be punting. Penn State has been lucky to have guys like Blake Gilligan, Barney and Moore, Jordan Stout, who literally did everything. He kicked, he punted, he kicked off. It didn't matter. Penn State doesn't seem to have as much confidence as they have in the past in their special teams unit. No idea who's going to return punts. I would imagine Keandre Lambert-Smith, but Caden Saunders is someone that could factor in. Daquan Hardy. Special teams can win or lose you games. So I hope that Penn State finds the right people to fit into those new spots, because it's all going to be a new look on, other than kickoff with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Penn State special teams are a total question mark, and I hope the transfers that they brought in help. Alex Felkins, Riley Thompson, they brought them in as insurance or guys to take the job. But that's going to do it for Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for joining this episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, become an everydayer, or wherever you get your podcast, and follow along on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Zach_Seiko, my personal account, and at Locked On Nittany. Reaction to practice coming up tomorrow here on Locked On Nittany Lions.